Hi, I'm William Lowe, and I am a technical sound designer for Clean Cuts Interactive, and I was put in charge of developing a VO workflow for Outer Worlds 2. The Obsidian team came to us and requested that we take a look at this because they had about 45,000 lines of VO to edit and master in just a couple of weeks. So I was put in charge of finding ways that we could optimize our VO pipeline and workflow and develop a custom Reaper configuration for this project. This is something that we've done before. I've developed Reaper configurations in the past for VO pipelines, and each time I do it, we just learn a little bit more and a little bit more. And this was really the culmination of all that work to figure out how do we get people to edit faster and faster. The biggest time suck that we found was just in the leveling process, in getting the volume of the line to be right. The main reason for that is these VO specs are usually quite broad. They are wide-ranging specs that can be plus or minus 5 LUFS, and also the struggle with LUFS. I mean, if a file is under 3 seconds, we can't get a valid LUFSI reading. So how do we work with that? And the solution we came to as far as that goes was a tiered spec system. So we had a different spec for whispered sounds, spoken or whispered lines, spoken lines, and shouted lines. And we had both an integrated spec and a momentary max spec for all of those specifications. Hello and welcome into Reaper. Okay, so let's start with talking about how a session is made here. So this session that you're seeing here is not an Outer Worlds 2 session. It is a different set of VO lines and script that I have available to me. But we are going to use this to sort of explain what's going on. So I am going to real quick just open up a script that I've made that is going to help illustrate how this project works. So I can browse for an Excel file, and that's going to prompt for a screen where I'll be able to select the Excel file that I need, and it's going to present me with the information. It gives me an option for which sheet in the spreadsheet I need, and a bunch of other information to be able to discern what is the important information in the document that I need in Reaper. That's the important part. So first thing is the take index column. So depending on the project and the workflow, this can be different things, but the way that I prefer to work is that each line from a record session has an associated take number. You can see them up here on markers and so this is 16. This audio file here, if we zoom in, is audio file 16. It's one-to-one related. That's usually how I like to work. So what's the column? Are there letters? Do I want to see the marker in the Reaper session? File name column. What is the final file name that I want this to be? We can see that gets put into the region up here. So this is the source file name that came out of the record session. This is what's going to come out of the edit session and be actually what we want in the game. The next thing we've got, do we want to embed the line text? This I find really useful. So the combination of this and the showing of the marker are the two most important things to this, because one of our goals here in optimizing the speed of the engineer is to not have to look at the script. Do not leave Reaper. Huge point. So part of that is you see this little quote icon here. That's the item note, and that gives me exactly what the audio coming out of the line will be. So if we click here real quick, and just move this, we'll see that this says...
Just use my AI knowledge profile and write what you see in the courtroom. The program will dissect the rest. It's nothing.
So that's telling us that that's the right thing. We'll come back as to another level of why that's useful, but this gives us an idea of what the line is, what am I looking for waveform-wise, a bit more of the information that I can sort of hold on to, again, without having to ever leave Reaper. The next thing we've got is, so we identify which column has the line text, and then do we want to filter by character? Are there multiple characters in the spreadsheet? Is this a single character spreadsheet? This one I've got here, I know column 5 is my characters, and I have all my characters listed here, and I can just sort of switch through as to what character I'm working on, and it will make sure to import the correct information based off of that. And I run this, and it gives me what we see up here. So let's dive into the editing process. So like we just said, I come to a line, I've got the take here, and I've got the file name. So I am going to jump to a different line just to take a look. So this workflow is based entirely on Pro Tools editing. So I hit B, and I'm going to split it there. I'm going to go to the end, and this marker's here. That's just for me to know where to go in the session. But it's 7B. I can tell pretty clearly this is the second take in the file. That's how I came here. As you can see, my zooming in and out is again Pro Tools. It's R and T. We'll do B to split there, just so you can see. A trims the top, S trims the end, D is a fade in, G is a fade out, but we don't really need those. Once we trim it, I've got this thing up here says top and tail. I'm going to go ahead and hit that, and this is a script that I designed with my coworker Rock Lee, who did some of the final figuring this out. But basically, we're doing level detection. And so there was a little extra here. That didn't get cleaned up, a little too loud. So I'm going to make it a little big again, hit that top and tail again, and it brings it into the right spots with pretty tight heads and tails. You can see it also adjusted the region. Throughout this, if I have anything to adjust, I can just make this a little bigger if I need to, and then hit again this resize region button, and that is going to give me just a resizing of the correct region to look at. So now we've got it a little closer.
Oh my god, I woke up with just a terrible fever, 102. You would not want me there like this.
Great. And that's now really clean, really tight, so we're able to move on. That tops and tails script, already a huge time saver. I mean, that just not needing to do the constant zoom in, zoom out of it all is just so great to just be able to look at that. And I always take a listen first to make sure. So usually the first time that I actually listen to a file is after I've done the top tails, just to make sure that nothing is really missing on it, or that is, I'm not feeling the in and the out, that it's not feeling cut off. And it gives me a chance to listen to the line, know a bit more about it. And that's where this text comes in really useful. Like, is this the O?
Oh my god.
Which it is, but I just want to make sure that this thing out here, that this isn't the O. But that's a breath, so we don't care about it. So now we're going to get into clip gain. We can see the line here. It's always great to have a button. And I've got in my other screen that you can't see, so I should probably bring it over, is Insight. In Reaper, it can get really tricky to meter correctly because of the lack of ability for Reaper to be in true mono. So we had to do some working around, and so that's part of why it's on its own dedicated monitor track. Another reason that there's a dedicated monitor track here is because of these buttons up at the top. we're going to look at first at these LUFS buttons up here. So we can see that we've got, actually, as we go across, we've got 2 buttons for each of our tiers of the spec. 2 for whispered, 2 for spoken, and 2 for yelled. And we got screamed as well, which is a slightly different aspect of the spec, but is still related. So each one of these have an LUFS button and a match button. The LUFS button looks specifically at how at trying to reduce the amount of gain adjustments that's happening manually by the engineer. So if this was this is spoken, we know this is spoken. So I'm going to hit this spoken LUFS button, and that is going to adjust it to be a bit closer to spec. The trickiness with these buttons is that there needs to be some manual offset. They look at the source file, not at the file after the effects chain. So there's a little bit of guesswork. So it's not a perfect button, but it gets you a lot closer. And the bigger help is the other button, which is the match button. These are going to look at a folder on the system that has been curated and continues to be updated by the management team of the project with ideal files in that range of loudness. So even though we have 3 specs, it's all spectrum, there's stuff that's in between all the time. And so if you need to know what is pure spoken, what is pure whispered, like what is that ideal, to sort of make sure I'm sitting in the right place and reset my ears and calibrate when I first sit down. That's what these buttons are for. And they'll play them through this monitor track, so there's no effects on it. We can see the insight values of stuff to sort of compare and contrast, and just not need to leave the DAW, not need to jump to a different point in the DAW. I don't need to go anywhere. I just press the button and I get a random file. And when I'm done listening, I hit stop if I just need to cut it off.
God, I
be it again with what I'm working on. And that's that. That's the core of this process, you know, just like looking a bit at the tops, whether I'm using the pen or my preference, just using that little tail button.
like this.
Maybe not lifting that all the way up for the breath there, but giving a little bit of life at the end of the file. We'd probably do some adjustments as to the general, just like toning of this.
Oh my God, I woke up with just a terrible fever, 102. You would not want me there like this. a terrible fever, 102. You would not want me there like this. A terrible fever, 102. You would not want me there like this. For 102, you. Oh my God, I woke up with just
And maybe we want to spec this, oh my God, a little differently than the rest. If something is this loud and this different from the rest of it, maybe we'll think about this as shouted.
Oh my God,
which is pretty much on spec for that.
I woke up with just a terrible fever, 102. You would not want me there like this.
A little quiet. We might adjust it some more, but that is the idea. Whoops. That is the idea behind this process and this workflow, optimizing the Reaper workflow. We've got some really easy render buttons, and actually the import script assigns everything to the region render matrix already. We've got presets set up in the rendering. So once the engineer is done, all that needs to happen is they open a render window, hit render, and everything will happen perfectly. Something just to say explicitly, because I sort of inferred it, but didn't really say it. The reason for the tiered spec is prioritizing a perception first approach to loudness. The actual numbers at the end of the day do not matter. a lot of the time I've got Insight open on my second window, or while I was editing this. I mean, my screen is big enough that I was kind of having this over here and looking here and listening, but not really looking at Insight until the very end. Because I kind of know what it should sound like. And that's because of the match files. That's because of being in the process. At the end of the day, the numbers don't matter. At the end of the day, it's sounding right is the right way to do it. So when I'm training people on this process, when they're new to this process, what I'll recommend is at the end, just go close Insight and listen through all your files at the end, and do a specific perception pass. Does everything sound in the same world? Does it sound like it's being spoken by the same person at the same place? And is it all right? If you're doing something spec specific, if you're batch processing something and telling everything to be -18, then the whispered stuff is going to sound super loud, the shouted stuff is going to sound super quiet, and it's going to be all over the place. And so our goal here is to prioritize perception through a tiered spec system that utilizes both integrated and momentary max measurements to support line lengths of below 3 seconds, and prioritize speed, comfortability, allowing engineers to really be in that zone and not keep on getting taken out by needing to go to look at a spreadsheet, find a match file, not know where to ask a question, streamline the process, make it super simple, and deliver on time. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll be here for questions. Thanks so much.
All right.
Hello.
Hey everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Hope you enjoyed that talk. And thanks so much to our presenter, William, for telling us a little bit about the few ways we tackled, over 45,000 lines of VO for this Outer Worlds to release that's happening tomorrow. So yeah, hope everyone is as excited as we are for this game to come out. And yeah, it looks like we have a few questions. Also, if anyone else has any questions for William about the Reaper process, feel free to start dropping them into the Q&A. But in the meantime, yeah, William, if you want to just pick a few and answer some of them.
Yeah, let's grab Chloe's, and there's an anonymous one that's very similar about whether this process is Reaper exclusive or whether it's something that you can adapt to other DAWs. That's something that we are currently tackling for another project right now, where there are aspects to the workflow that have to be done in Pro Tools and not in Reaper. And the tiered spec helps, but I in the past 2 weeks I've been doing this process both in Pro Tools and in Reaper, and it is still much faster in Reaper. Having that script that auto cuts the tops and tails, having the ability to render and rename so quickly and build that session so efficiently, that's all Reaper specific right now. It's not something that we've been able to replicate in Pro Tools. It might be possible in the future once the Pro Tools API sort of settles down a little bit, but now version to version, they're adding new function, depreciating functions, so there's no ability for there to be longevity in Pro Tools scripting currently. So right now it is Pro Tools specific. Or sorry, Reaper specific, not Pro Tools.
Awesome.
There are also a couple of questions about the determining of the tiered spec, which we can absolutely chat about for a second. It was a bit of trial and error, and a bit of taking a game that we did and sort of doing an analysis of it. And before we had this tiered spec, we had a target of like -18 with a range of like +4 -5 or something like that. Maybe it was -3 +5, but we had a very broad, wide-ranging spec that tried to encompass all of this variety that we could get. And what ended up happening is we were getting lines that were just not sounding right, and so we implemented this second pass called a perception pass into our workflow. And what we found is that the whispered lines kind of centered around a certain loudness, the spoken line centered around a certain loudness, and the shouted line centered around a certain loudness. And that's how we were able to sort of determine the spec. So right now, what we're exploring is an integrated of -20, -18, and -14 respectively, and a momentary max of -16, -15, and -11 respectively. So again, I don't know if I hit this too well, but LUFS M momentary can work on lines that are at least 400 milliseconds long, and integrated needs to be at least 3 seconds. That's the same as short-term loudness. So for those shorter lines, we'll look more at momentary, because the integrated isn't totally trustworthy, and for the longer lines, we get the integrated aspects there. So we've gotten that one. We've gotten that one.
Time for one more question.
Yeah, happy to hit as many more. We've done that one. I'm gonna look at David's real quick. So some of the scripts we get are one take number, then multiple lines within. How does the script help with the sub-take separation? That is a great question. This is a conversation that we have with our clients and with the record studio doing the records. We have found that it is better bang for your buck for the client, for us, for everyone's workflow, for somebody, either the record studio ideally, or we do this as a separate step of just having someone go through and just split stuff into single line clips that we can then build off of. It's a super quick process. It doesn't require it requires very little listening. It's a lot of just sort of tracking waveforms. A lot of the time that'll come in the form of Pro Tools, which in the newest Pro Tools, you get the actual transcript of the line. So you can use that to find the points where you just need to split, consolidate, split, consolidate, split, consolidate. And that's where Pro Tools, we have a lot of advantages there, because it'll just increment those numbers perfectly, and we can use that as our link between what is the line in the spreadsheet, what is the file number, to draw that connection. So if we can get the record studio to record it one line at a time and just do a quick stop start, so that it is individual lines, or we'll do a separate process where we go through cut. Yeah, and then you'd end up creating a new select number. You saw in the example that I used that the lines that I had multiple takes inside of it. So we had like 6B. And so in that, it's on the editor to cut out the B take from that select, but they're all the same line. So depending on how you're doing your note taking, you might not need a new select number, or you need an extra column in your spreadsheet that is, index line, file in source file index or something to sort of draw that connection, and then it would look at your select column to bring in the actual select answer. But it's all very project specific, and it's always a conversation with our clients about sort of what the best solution is for them for their project. Yeah, absolutely, David. I'm looking at James's real quick. When the rendering hundreds of files and using Reaper's wildcards to quickly name them, is there a way to number files within multiple groups of voice lines on the same track? For example, group 1 lines 1 through 5, group 2 lines 1 through 5. If I'm understanding your question correctly, I think there is a wild card for what number item it is on the track. If it's different from that, something that we've done in the past with VO effects, where we'll get voiceover effects, sort of like we've gotten various different versions of VO effects. But what I'll do is I'll say, this is the voiceover effects split. We'll usually get like 5, 10, however many, all in one take, split it up into individual files, and then have a separate script that spaces them out, gives each one a specific region, and does that subnaming. So if, you know, the file name for all of them is VOFX, VOFX Hannah attack would be the large region file name, and then the VOFX script would say, okay, split them all up, then add underscore 01, 02, 03, 04. And we had an aspect to that script that allowed us to say, okay, because for some stuff we were getting attack 01, attack 02, and then they would want attack 01, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or all these sort of different ways of looking at that. And so usually it's an additional custom script to handle those one-off situations, but it does fully depend project to project. My hope with this, the sort of UI script you saw, the script with the UI, is to cut down on a lot of the project-specific scripting we're doing and allow to tackle problems like that much more efficiently. Because prior to that, we were sort of going from scratch each time, looking at ways to analyze each of the scripts that we'd get from clients separately, because they're all so very unique. Yeah, and I think I grabbed that effort question a little bit. Lastly, I just want to hit, just in the last minute we've got, how long does it take to train someone? It fully depends on their background. The advantage we have at Clean Cuts Interactive is that we have access to our entire team of Clean Cuts mixers and studio engineers, and they're all well versed on Pro Tools. So the idea is that all the hotkeys work as if you know Pro Tools, so it is pretty straightforward and pretty simple to transfer those skills. So it's a pretty low learning curve, and then everything else is pretty easy. I'd say less, a day max, pretty much get someone up to speed. And so if you've got someone for a week, by the end of the week, they're moving like a pro, which is really exciting and one of our big goals for this, especially.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, William, and thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, we just want to also give thanks to Obsidian for bringing us on for this amazing project. The audio lead, Mark Carlton, worked with, 3 of our senior sound designers for the past year and a half, on everything from weapon design to ambiances to level support. And then we joined on for the VO portion of the project in the last few months. So it's been very exciting. And it's been great to work with a lot of other partners on this. We worked with Karen over at I Hear You, who brought on so many amazing talent that make up this game. Some really amazing recording studios and all the talent as well. It was just such a big undertaking, and we, obviously couldn't have all collectively done it without each part. So cool. Well, thank you again, all. If you guys have any questions or follow-ups, feel free to reach out to us on the Whova app, or you can reach out to us on our website or email cci@cleancuts.com. And yeah, hope you guys have a great rest of your time at GameSoundCon and that we get to cross paths again soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a good
Thank
one.
you all. Thanks for being here.
Bye.